SmorgShow Radio.
Merry Xmas, all that stuff.
Welcome back to the another episode of the Smorgasbord Radio Show, SmorgShow Podcast. Merry Christmas. As we close out 2023, I wasn't sure we were going to be able to slip in another episode. But I was laying in bed one morning. I thought, nah, we've got to close it out. If nothing else, make it a short one. Thank everybody for listening to us and all that sort of thing. And then I thought, you know what? There's an old-time radio play. For those of you who have been around, you're familiar with this, but we have created some of those old-time radio dramas, from the 40s and 50s, actually 30s probably even. The dramas with the sound effects and the crinkling radio static sound and all that. We've done about a dozen or so, including It's a Wonderful Life, Christmas Carol, lots of murder mysteries, things like that. You can check it out on the website, SmorgShow.com, in the SmorgShow Theater section. Somewhere on there, you'll find all the productions. But there's one Christmas show production that we did that often gets overlooked because it's not a traditional Christmas story. We did this back in 2016, and it's called Letter from Cynthia. It was originally broadcast in 1949, Christmas of 1949, on the old-time radio drama series The Whistler. For those of you who are familiar with that genre, The Whistler was a pretty popular series, I think, in the 40s and 50s. And so we did this one. It's not a traditional Christmas story, but it does have some Christmas elements to it. I thought it might be good to dig this one off, dust it off, and replay it here. We don't have any new material on this particular episode. Jerry's not here. Allie's not here. Allie's probably getting her Christmas shopping done. But her old man is here, trying to cross the finish line as we head into 2024. So we will play this and come back and just close out the year. All right? Smorgasbord Radio, SmorgShow Podcast. Enjoy.
To the holiday staff on duty at the small hospital on the outskirts of a small town on the coast of Southern California, Christmas night was much like any other night. Not quite, of course, for the spirit of the season was in the air. A tree austerely but beautifully decorated in a motif of silver and white stood majestically alone in the center of the reception lobby. The attractive receptionist at the desk, who doubled on the switchboard at night, glanced eagerly at a dozen festively wrapped packages, presents left for her earlier in the day by various members of the staff. From the church across the street, the soft melody of a Christmas carol floated through the open window on the far side. The sound of footsteps descending the stairs on the right caused the girl to glance up as one of the newer doctors who was serving his internship strolled casually to the desk.
Thought I'd come down for a little breather. Kind of slow tonight, Patty.
Is that bad for Christmas night? What do you want from Santa Claus anyway, Dr. Andrews? A couple of emergency appendectomies?
No, I didn't mean that. I just meant it's kind of...
Aw, sure, I know. And it suits me fine. I got 2 hours of sleep today, and 8 hours in front of me here at this desk.
Oh, that's bad, Pat. You'll never see your grandchildren if you keep that up.
Oh, people were dropping in all day long. You know how it is Christmas Day.
Uh-huh.
Good night, Patty. Hope you had a nice Christmas.
Oh, I did, Dr. Peters. Thanks for the nice present.
You're welcome. Well, good night.
Good night, Doctor.
Night, Doc.
Night, Neil.
Yep, Patty, it's like I said. A gal like you needs 8 hours of sleep a day.
Did you get 8 hours of sleep today, Doctor?
10.
You would. You know, you're an odd man, Dr. Andrews.
Odd? Well, how do you mean?
I mean, I don't know. You act like there's something bothering you. Like there's something on your mind all the time.
Well, maybe there is.
Well, everybody has things on their mind. You could still go out and dance and have fun like the other doctors do. The single ones, I mean.
Too busy. I'm still an intern, you know.
You make it sound like a sentence. Yes? Outside line? Yes, sir. Oh, here, doctor, I almost forgot.
Huh?
Maybe this pretty pink envelope will change your viewpoint.
A letter. When did this come?
I don't know. I just came on duty 10 minutes ago. Why didn't you open it? Why, Dr. Andrews, your hands are trembling. I believe your viewpoint has changed already.
Neil's hands are trembling as he recognizes the handwriting and reads the return address on the envelope. The address of lovely Cynthia Walker. She's out of his life now. No, she'll never be out of his life. He's out of hers. Neil walks across the lobby, chooses a chair near a light, and stares into space for a moment. The memory of that last moment with Cynthia crowding every other thought from his mind. It isn't pleasant to recall the unfortunate accident that cost Neil his reputation, his position, and the love of Cynthia Walker. It was at the very beginning of Neil's career as an intern in an important hospital. Neil remembers Cynthia's thoughtless, angry words that followed. Yes, looking back to that day more than a year ago, it's hard for Neil to believe now that a few hours could have made so much difference in his future. And as he tries to read the words on the scrap of paper, Cynthia's letter in his hand, Neil knows that one man is responsible for it all. Charles Arthur Bennett, the man who lied when the truth would have cleared Neil. Charles Arthur Bennett, the man who called himself Neil's best friend. The sound of an ambulance wheeling into the receiving room below shatters Neil's train of thought. Across the room, a yellow light flashes on the switchboard. Neil turns quickly back to the letter.
Yes, he's here.
But Neil's thoughts are blurred.
Yes, certainly, Doctor.
Neil knows he won't have time to finish the letter.
Yes, Doctor. Yes, Doctor. I'll make out the registration card right away. Oh, Dr. Andrews.
Yes, Pat? Admitting room?
No, Miss Stevens is busy. 412 has had a relapse.
Oh.
They're taking the emergency to the 3rd floor. Dr. Graham wants you to go to the 3rd floor drug room.
What kind of accident?
Car crash. Traumatic and hemotractic shock. Patient very weak. Dr. Graham wants you to prepare injections of fentanyl and atropine. Take them to the operating room, 3rd floor.
Right. I was afraid we might have one of these before the day was over. Did you get any of the details?
No. Only that it was an automobile accident. Man's unconscious, but according to the identification card in his wallet, his name is Charles Bennett, salesman.
Who did you say?
Bennett. Charles Arthur Bennett, Los Angeles.
Neil is shocked to hear the name. For more than a year, his resentment of Charlie Bennett has smoldered. And now the girl at the switchboard tells Neil that Charlie is here in the hospital where Neil is now interning, the victim of an automobile accident. Neil has to prepare the drugs that might save Charlie's life. Might save his life. As Neil hurries up the stairs along the hallway to the laboratory, his thoughts go back to that night more than a year ago. The circumstances were quite different then because, although Neil didn't realize it, that night he was at the mercy of Charlie Bennett. The night, which began at a birthday party for Charlie Bennett more than a year ago at the home of a mutual friend. But, as far as Neil was concerned, there were just the three of them. Neil, Cynthia, and Charlie.
Oh, it's a wonderful party. I wish I didn't have to leave right in the middle of it.
Well, if you must, you must. I'll drive you home.
No, darling. I've already phoned for a taxi. Now, this is the first time you've been off duty from the hospital in a long time. I want you to stay here and relax. Have fun.
Okay, but I might get into trouble, you know.
I trust you. You're a big boy now, or I wouldn't have told you I'd marry you.
Have you told Charlie?
No, not yet. I'll tell him tomorrow. I don't want to seem conceited, but, well, telling him tonight that I'm going to marry you, it just might spoil his birthday party.
Yes, it would.
By the way, where is Charlie?
Oh, he's around. Over in the corner, I think. That island completely surrounded by an ocean of blondes.
Well, I wouldn't think of invading that territory just to tell him goodnight. You tell him for me, will you?
Sure. Do you really have to go?
Oh, I'm afraid so. Jane's only in town for the night, and I don't get to see my sister very often. My taxi ought to be here by now. Now it's your night off, dear. You have fun. You interns don't get out of the hospital often enough. And besides, the champagne's wonderful.
Anything you say, darling.
Reluctantly, Neil sees Cynthia to a cab. Neil comes back to the birthday party for Charlie and takes Cynthia's advice to enjoy a little champagne. He makes party talk with other friends, and he has a good time, relaxed for the first time in weeks. In another hour or two, most of the crowd is gone, and finally, Neil convinces Charlie that it's time to go home. In the lobby, going out,
Why don't you leave your car here, Charlie, and go home in style like I am?
What do you mean in style?
Leave your car here, get a taxi.
Hey, what's the idea? I can drive. Oh, don't tell me the good doctor's feeling a little champagne.
Oh, no, not really. But I just don't want to do any driving, that's all.
Well, you don't have to do any. A little bit of champagne didn't bother me. Look, tell you what. We live close to each other. We'll use your car, and I'll pick up mine tomorrow.
I'd sure rather take a taxi.
Oh, there aren't any taxis around anyway.
There's a stand about 3 blocks away.
Not at night, Neil. Besides, you'll need your car to get to the hospital in the morning. Come on, Neil boy. I'm okay.
Oh, all right, if you're sure. Let's go. But take it easy now.
Oh, absolutely.
Once in the car, Neil makes one more effort to talk Charlie out of driving, but to no avail. Neil is getting a little weary of the slight argument, so he lets Charlie drive his car. And after the first few blocks, Neil decides he has nothing to worry about. Charlie seems to be driving satisfactorily, slightly over the speed limit, but everything seems to be all right, until he suddenly turns a corner sharply. That's the last Neil remembers for a little while. When he opens his eyes, he feels a dizziness, a dull pain at his temple.
Come on. Come on now, fella. That's it. Come on, boy. Come on. Here. Are you hurt? Hurt? No, officer. Okay, not much, I guess. Just a bump on the head. That lamppost made quite an impression on your car, though. What's the idea of driving like that?
Me driving? Charlie was driving.
Oh, Charlie was driving.
Yeah, he's gone.
He sure is. Say, you're a little on the woozy side, my friend.
But Charlie, where's Charlie?
Come on, chum. That's enough about Charlie. Now, how much have you had to drink, anyway?
I haven't had much to drink. Now look here, officer.
Charlie was here. I know he was here. No one was here, chum. I heard the crash around the corner and came straight here. No Charlie, no nobody. Just you. And a little man who wasn't here. But he couldn't have gone. Charlie! That's all, chum. We've got a swell place for you downtown where you can sleep on it.
It's like a nightmare. Neil is bewildered and confused by what's happening. It's all a mistake, he thinks. A horrible mistake. And Charlie will show up soon to explain everything. But Charlie does not show up. Neil is booked at police headquarters and spends the rest of the night pacing back and forth in jail. Finally, in the early morning, someone is there to put up bail.
Hello, Cynthia.
Hello, Neil. I came as quickly as I could.
Thanks. Thanks for springing me.
Come along, Neil. I'll drive you home.
How did you find out I was here?
The whole story is in the morning papers. And it mentions your connection with the hospital, too.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Dr. Rogers called me about it. He was quite concerned.
Well, he needn't have been. We'll get this whole thing cleared up in no time. No time at all.
Oh, I hope so, Neil.
Sure. Just as soon as I see Charlie Bennett.
Charlie?
Yeah. He'll tell them what really happened. He was driving the car. It was all his fault. I was just... What's the matter, Cynthia? Why are you looking at me like that?
Well, I've already talked with Charlie.
Then he told you how it really happened.
Charlie said he wasn't with you last night when it happened. He said he took a cab. He went home alone.
Neil is stunned. He's certain there must be some mistake. Neil thinks that once Charlie understands how much it means, he'll realize what's happened and tell the truth. It's too late to prevent the unfavorable publicity for the hospital, but at least Neil thinks he can be cleared in Dr. Rogers' eyes and in Cynthia's. Neil sees that Cynthia gets home and then takes a taxi directly to Charlie's apartment. Only Charlie isn't there. The desk clerk lets Neil in, and he settles down to wait and to think. Nearly 2 hours later, a key sounds in the door.
Neil! Hiya, pal. Why didn't you tell me you were coming? I would have waited.
I didn't plan on it. The desk clerk let me in. You talked to Cynthia on the phone this morning, didn't you, Charlie?
Cynthia? Yeah. Crack of dawn. Naturally, she was worried about you.
Naturally. And what did you tell her?
Ah, so that's what's worrying you, huh? Well, I didn't really mean to do it, Neil, but I had to. Want a drink?
No.
Mind if I have one?
Look, Charlie, I'm trying to give you a chance to explain.
Okay. No reason to get sore.
You lied to Cynthia. Why?
Well, I told you. I had to. You know, as a salesman, I have to drive a car to make a living.
What's that got to do with it?
Only everything, that's all. Look, Neil, I didn't bother to mention it to anyone, but I was in a scrape 3 weeks ago. I got hauled up for driving under the weather. I got out for the fine and a warning that time.
Wait a minute. You mean you deliberately let me take the rap for your accident last night?
Well, I tell you, I couldn't help it.
Do you know what a spot this has put me in? The hospital has a reputation they're pretty jealous of, you know.
Sure, and I've got a job.
And so have I. I think you'd better put down that drink and put your coat back on, Charlie.
Why?
Because you're coming with me to explain to Dr. Rogers. Then we're going together to see Cynthia.
Oh, what good would that do? Look, it's all over now, Neil.
You mean you're refusing?
I mean, I went home in a taxi last night alone. Told my story once, and I don't see anything to gain by changing it now.
Suddenly it occurs to Neil that Charlie has a more important reason for lying. His job is only part of it. He's always wanted to marry Cynthia, despite their long friendship. Charlie believes anything's fair in love or war. It's as simple as that. And with Neil out of the way, Charlie is sure he'll have a clear field. Neil is worried about Cynthia and what she thinks.
Neil, I just can't understand it.
You don't believe me, do you? But you do believe Charlie.
Well, why would he lie about a thing like that?
Because with me out of the way, he thinks he could marry you.
Neil, I've known Charlie for years. He wouldn't do anything like that. Besides, he's your best friend.
Oh, yeah. He's proved that, hasn't he?
Neil, aren't you forgetting that Charlie wasn't found in the wreck? That you were. You all alone. Your story is... well, it's too fantastic. The police don't believe it. And Charlie says it couldn't have been that way.
And you, Cynthia? What do you say?
Oh, Neil, what can I say? Do you think I want to believe this? And Dr. Rogers in the hospital, what do they say?
Well, naturally, I resigned. I couldn't do anything else. I don't blame them for what they think, any of them. But I know I'm right. And... never mind, Cynthia. Guess there's no use in going over all that again.
Neil, you're not going, are you?
Well, why not? I don't seem to be getting anywhere.
What's going to happen, Neil? Will you... Do you think you'll be able to get an internship somewhere else?
Yes, I think so. I'm just as qualified as I ever was. My previous record was good, and I've learned a lot. Sorry this has been too much for you, Cynthia.
I haven't said that.
You wouldn't consider marrying a man you didn't believe, would you?
I want to believe you, Neil. More than I've ever wanted to believe anything.
Well, maybe you will someday. Maybe you'll learn the truth. When you do, let me know. You'll be able to find me.
It all happened more than a year ago. Neil cut off all contact with his friends in Los Angeles. He's often wondered if Cynthia ever married Charlie, and every time Neil wondered, his hatred toward his friend Charlie has grown deeper. Neil even entertained the thought of killing Charlie. And now on Christmas night, more than a year later, in a small, out-of-the-way hospital, fate places the life of Charlie Bennett squarely in Neil's hands. The switchboard operator told Neil that Charlie is in the operating room, unconscious, seriously injured in an auto accident. Neil has been assigned to prepare the medication, which will spell life or death for Charlie. Just a little too much, or not quite enough. It's almost too easy. Not the slightest suspicion could be attached to Neil. Neil smiles as he enters the drug room. Inside, he finds another intern there.
What's the emergency, Neil?
Car wreck.
You assisting?
No, just preparing the fentanyl and atropine shots.
Well, it must have been a pretty bad accident.
I'm afraid so. Did you ever stop to think about the power of these drugs? Just the right amount means almost certain recovery. And too much or too little, oblivion.
Do you always get this philosophical at Christmas?
No, but I guess this case made me think about it more than usual. You see, I know the guy.
Oh, a friend?
You said it. What a friend.
Kind of an unusual situation, isn't it?
A very unusual situation.
Neil puts on his sterile mask and gown and prepares the injections. He carries them to the operating room where he places them on the instrument tray, without even a glance at the masked, sheet-covered patient. Dr. Graham gives a nod of dismissal, and Neil quietly leaves the operating room where Charlie Bennett's chance for life or death lies squarely in the hands of Neil. He never dreamed he'd have such an opportunity. After removing his mask and gown, Neil returns to the hallway and waits by a window near the operating room. As the melody from the church drifts in through the partially open window, Neil wonders whether he's glad or sorry for what he's done. Then he remembers the disgrace Charlie Bennett brought on him, shattered hopes, the happiness he might have had with Cynthia. And Neil knows the answer. Even if he could, he wouldn't change the situation in the slightest. He pauses under a ceiling light and decides to finish Cynthia's letter. Suddenly, Neil's heart beats faster as he realizes that Cynthia is still Miss Cynthia Walker. Neil can almost hear the words as the melody of her voice haunts his memory.
And now, as another Christmas approaches, I realize how hasty I seemed in my judgment.
But you were even more hasty in your action. Your sudden, abrupt leaving, not letting me know where you were. I now know how wrong I was to doubt you. But even when my doubts were deepest, I loved you. You told me once a woman loves in spite of a man's weakness, not because of his strength. Remember, Neil? Well, so it was, and is, with me and you. I haven't changed, and I can't believe that you have. Merry Christmas, Cynthia.
Neil turns away to stare out the window. Suddenly, he's horrified and ashamed that being a doctor, bound by the sacred oath of Hippocrates, he allowed his hatred of Charlie Bennett to bring him to the point that it did. Finally, the door to the operating room opens. The still form is wheeled silently past Neil. He continues to stare out the window. Neil lights a cigarette and waits for Dr. Graham to emerge from the operating room. As he opens the operating room door and enters the hallway, Neil walks slowly toward him.
How's the patient, Doctor?
Well, the patient's going to be all right. Glad you were around. Fentanyl is a godsend. May I have one of your cigarettes, Neil?
Oh, sure, Doc.
Thank you. Wish fentanyl had been available when I first started practice. As a matter of fact, I wish I were young like you, just beginning. You'll be a great doctor one day, Neil.
Will I?
I'm sure of it. You're honest, duty comes first with you, while you could no more abate it than commit murder.
No, I guess I couldn't. But I almost made a terrible mistake a little while ago. A mistake that could have been fatal to your patient.
But you didn't.
No, I didn't. And I don't think I'll ever be tempted to make a simple little mistake again.
I'm sure you won't, whatever it was. No, the practice of medicine is in your heart, above everything.
Yes, I guess it is.
Oh, it is. I've always known that. That's why I appointed you.
Thank you, Doctor. Oh, when can I speak with Mr. Bennett?
Oh, anytime you wish. He's lying down in my office. Bennett wasn't seriously injured, just knocked out temporarily. He was driving the car. Our patient in the operating room was the young lady with him.
You mean someone else was?
Yes. The surgery was for the young lady. It seems the two of them were on their way out here to the hospital to see one of our interns. She'll be just fine, though.
Doctor, who was she?
Well, her name was Walker. Cynthia Walker.
Well, there you go. Hope you enjoyed that. I had fun listening to that again. It's been 7 years and brings back a lot of memories, bringing everybody down to the studio here, doing our own parts, and then sending them off, and then adding our magic to it afterwards with the music and the sound effects. We really should do another one of those. We had a couple of additional ones teed up for production, and we just never moved forward with them. So maybe in 2024, I will commit to doing at least one new radio play. We'll see. But anyway, as we close out 2023, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in, whether this is your first time listening, or if you've been with us here and there over the years. Of course, we go back to 1982, the Smorgasbord brand name. But after a 25-year hiatus after high school, we relaunched the podcast back in 2010 with my daughter. And then, of course, she carried the first half of these episodes, at least, through episode 100 or so. And then, of course, Dave, the original co-host, and Jerry have come out to do, their parts over the years. And Jerry, of course, really helping out over the past few years, especially. But that's about it. Speaking of Jerry, it wouldn't be complete without closing the year out with Jerry's Merry Christmas message from many years ago. It's still applicable today.
And I'd just like to say Merry Christmas to all you nice people out there who know how to really treat and respect private property of somebody else, and have totally goodwill towards other people and all that. I just hope somebody does to your eggnog what they did to my hat.
There's a story behind that, of course. But it doesn't go with this beautiful choir. We'll save that for another time. This is the Smorgasbord Radio Show. I'm Chris, and thanks again for listening. And we'll be back again with many more in 2024. Take care. Happy New Year.
I really can't stay.
Baby, it's cold outside.
I've got to go away.
Baby, it's cold outside.
This evening has been so very nice.
Hold your hands there just like ice.
My mother will start to worry.
Beautiful, what's your
My father
hurry?
will be pacing the floor.
Listen to the fireplace
So
roar.
really I'd better scurry.
Beautiful, please don't hurry.
Or maybe just a half a drink more.
Put some records on without
The neighbors might think.
Baby, it's bad out there.
Say what's in this
No chance to be
drink.
had out there.
I wish I knew how
like
to
starlight.
break the spell.
Take your hat, your hair looks so
I ought to say no, no, no,
9 to
sir.
5, move a little
At least I'm
closer.
gonna say that I
What's the
tried.
sense in hurting my
I really
pride?
can't
Baby, don't
stay.
hold out,
But it's cold outside.